Hi there. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Are you on mute? Still can't hear you. I'll tell you when I can. I'll give you a thumbs up when I can hear you.
That better? There you go.
There you are.
Gosh, hold on. Jeez. It's like I'm a rookie or something.
Okay.
Well, my wife's like, oh man, I got a meeting at 5:30. I'm like, oh, I got a meeting at 5, and I'm trying to get on this old, like, this is actually a police officer laptop. So it's crazy. Anyways, I appreciate you taking the time. Sorry for being late, but how are you today?
I'm great. It just sends me into a panic. Like, did I have the right time? Did I have the right date? Did I have the right problem? I'm great. We got back from Mexico last night, so today's a catch-up day for us too, trying to get everything back in order. And you leave with everything in order, and then you come home. You're like, how can everything be out of order? I left with everything in order, and now it's not.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's the thing with, like, when you go on a vacation, it's like you need another vacation after the vacation.
Yeah. I mean, grocery shopping in itself is a giant task when you've been out of town for 8 days, So.
Oh yeah. No, I can only appreciate that. So, well, thank you for joining me on the Running Educator podcast. What I kind of like to do is just kind of lighten up the mood, do kind of 5 silly random questions, and then just kind of get into it. I'll go back and kind of edit this out. And then pretty much I just kind of want to, my whole purpose on this is just to understand you, Sonny Lawerence, the mom, the wife, the aunt, the individuals that you play, and just, seeing all the posts, everything that I saw, throughout the entire 100, it's just amazing to see the logistics of it all go through, and then not only that, what it did to you and how you came about it. I kind of said, yeah, James was the brawn behind it, but who's the brains behind it? So I wanted to get that perspective. But so since you just got back, would the beach or the mountains, which one would you prefer?
Always the mountains, every day of the week.
I was going to say, you're from, Utah. You got probably the greatest mountains and closest to the, European, mountains, but
they're the same. I'm telling you, they're the same. In fact, I've lived here almost my entire life, and still every time I see them, they take my breath away. So that says something, right? That says something.
Yeah. Well, Alta's a wonderful area. Brighton's a great area too. And that's kind of, you guys are over in that area, correct?
Yeah, that's just into the valley, but it's 30 minutes. So
yeah, that's awesome. So ride or swim, which one are you doing?
I love swimming, biking, running, all the same. The thing I like more about riding though is it's more social. So when you're swimming, you can't talk to anybody, right?
Yeah. Well, not only that, when somebody's cheering for you, you can't really hear them.
Can't hear them.
Yeah.
So I'd have to choose riding over swimming simply because it's more social.
Oh, well, that's saying something. So sunset or sunrise?
Sunrise.
Okay. Pizzas or tacos?
Oh, that's an unfair question.
Yes, it's a loaded question, but yeah.
Pizza was my favorite food my whole life, but I think I would go with tacos.
Yeah. All right. Who's easier to manage, the kids or James?
The kids.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
All 5 of them? Wow. That's crazy.
I think all 5 of them are easier than just James. Because they have a part of me in them, right? James came from a completely different background, a different everything. Or with the kids, there's a little bit of me in them, and I was able to raise them
Right.
So they do a lot of the things I've always wanted them to do, where James, he just does James. So,
Right. So you're originally an American, correct? And he's
yep.
the Canadian.
Yep.
How did you all meet?
So he came down to see a friend and was like, wow, this place is amazing. It's not 9 months of winter. I'm staying here. So he stayed and he enrolled in a semester of college, and we met in that semester of college.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, and just kind of going back to the kids question, managing 5 kids through all of this, is there a lot of guidance, or is there a lot of telling, or is there a shared, I mean, there's got to be some shared roles going into that with everything going on, and not only just like do the 50-50 or the 100, but just on an everyday life. Tell us a little bit about, the managing the 5 kids, raising 5 kids. I mean, that's got to be a task in itself. So
I always tell people it's a downsize because I came from 8. So 5 is not a large family to me. James came from 4. So I always say, oh, we kind of met in the middle somewhere. But, when kids are little, I mean, I feel like raising kids, either you pay the price in prevention or you pay the price in treatment.
Hmm.
So I chose to pay the price in prevention. And I was very emotionally and physically invested with them when they were young, because it's like training a puppy, it's either prevention or it's treatment. And I wanted to make sure that I enjoyed them when they were older, because we've all dealt with difficult people. And so I wanted to make sure I enjoyed them when they were older. And so I was very meticulous about the way I parented when they were young. And now I very much enjoy them. And I enjoyed them when they were young too, because they were great when they were young. But it was very hard when they were young because James traveled and I had them very close together. I had 5 and 6 years. And I was intentional. I did that on purpose. And so I really quite enjoy them. So our journey, something that I told them their entire lives, is that we are a team. I never wanted there to be sibling rivalry. I never wanted it to be comparison or even contrasting. I wanted every child to feel that they were an individual and that they had their own journey and they had their own path. And that was not the path that I chose for them. It was the path that they were destined to follow. And so when they were growing up, I was very conscious of making sure that they acted, behaved, dressed, and that they were themselves. And so I really focused on team. And that has been reward. I've been rewarded for that over the years, because when it comes to a project or any type of a, event where we had to really pull together, I could count on my team. And so even through the 50, I was able to count on the kids. The 2 older girls were a little more helpful. They were 12 and 11 at the time, but 12 and 11 is quite helpful, especially when you're first 2. And I was really able to count on them to help me even with little things. And then this time around, it was a totally different thing. I was able to count on them for a lot of things. And when we went into the 100, I talked to the family and said, we're each going to have to pull our load. This is a family project. It's something we're going to need to do together. And so there were many nights that I would, go into the bedroom and start prepping James's things and come out, and one of the kids had completely cleaned up the kitchen, or,
Wow.
the dog had been fed, or, things had been handled and done.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you how many times, Lucy stepped in and handled my projects, recognizing I was having a hard time managing more than one project. And whether it was driving kids places or putting groceries away, whatever it was, my team really pulled through, and I was able to count on them to be a part of my team and to lean on them a little bit. So it was a beautiful thing, very beautiful thing.
That's awesome. So during this, the kids, they are homeschooled, correct?
No,
No?
nope.
So
No,
they're
a
on
lot of
summer
people think
vacation
they
right
are
now.
because I have so many.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like I didn't remember in the book on the 50-50 if the kids were homeschooled, if that was during the school. Obviously, if they're during school.
So they were able to choose this year if they wanted to go live or do homeschool. Lucy was taking university classes. She was doing concurrent classes with the high school. So her stuff was all online. And then the way the schedule worked, all the kids wanted to go to school because they wanted to be with their friends. And the way the schedule worked is that the other girls got out at 12:30. So they were home by 12:45 every day. I mean, of course, they had jobs and things they were doing as well at the same time. but they managed their schoolwork, their jobs, their hobbies, their friends, their lives, all while contributing to the Conquer 100.
Wow.
That's way, in my opinion, that's way more impressive than what I did. These kids that, they showed up to help James. They would support him in the mornings. They would go on the marathon with him. They were working. They were in school. They were doing homework. They had their singing lessons. They had their lacrosse practice. And yet they managed to still contribute to the project on top of all those events.
That's pretty crazy too. Just even think about that. And that's awesome that you have that teamship, kind of cooperative lifestyle of helping one another and picking up the pieces. And, it's not all about, James. It's about everybody putting in to help
Definitely.
the overall, project and goal.
Well, otherwise they would resent the project, right? They'd be like,
yeah,
we have to do things. My dad's making us do this thing. I'm like, there's got to be something in it for them that they feel emotionally invested, as opposed to just being forced because we make them because we're their parents.
For sure. And I seeing a lot of the posts and some of the dark posts that James had during his darkest moments of, I remember him walking one morning and like, I'm going to try today, it was like he was,
right towards the end.
So that's the other part. Like, what were some of the darkest, weakest moments for everybody going into this, and great, obviously you talk about the greatest strengths of everybody helping out and putting towards the team and helping one another, but what are some of the weaknesses that you all had with that 100 as a family?
I think boredom. You get to the middle of a project
right,
and people go, I'm kind of over this. I don't really want to get up early anymore. I don't really want to show up anymore. Attitudes shift and change. And it's not just, it's everybody. It's not just volunteers. It's not just the paid employees. It's not just the family. It's everybody. And we anticipated a dip in the 50s and kind of the early 80s, maybe the early 90s, knowing kind of the ebb and flow of entertainment, where people would be engaged and how they'd be entertained. And to be honest, we nailed them. We knew exactly when they were going to come, and we were dead right. So one of the things I think was interesting about that is that people who could dipped. People got lazy. People didn't show up the way they were supposed to. They weren't as reliable as they had committed to be. But like for me and James, it couldn't be us. It couldn't be us. It could be anybody. My dog, hang on. My famous Pacha. It could be anybody, but it couldn't be us.
Right.
So if somebody doesn't show up for work one day, it doesn't matter to them, but to us, it was like, well, if it's me or James, the project doesn't happen.
Right.
And so we had to be very conscious to, one, be emotionally supportive to the people who were dipping. It's okay. It's okay that you're struggling to show up. It's okay. I really tried to exercise compassion. James was a little less patient just because of his emotional state, but I really tried to exercise compassion because it was a long journey. It was a very long journey. And so when people needed a break, we were like, take a break. If you need to step out to regroup, if you need to sleep in one day, if you need to, and I even took, they let me sleep in on my birthday. James said, what do you want for your birthday? It was April 15th. And I said, I just want to sleep in. I want someone to sub in for the swim, and I want to sleep in.
Right.
Because the first month was incredibly difficult and incredibly demanding. And that was the 2 hours to sleep at night. And that's it, right? There was no naps, there was no nothing.
Right.
And then they offered to let me sleep in on Mother's Day, but I was like, nah, I'm good. Sundays, I could usually come back and go back to bed when we hit towards the middle. But I actually had a speaking event that I had to go to and took a break the last weekend before we finished. And getting out of town for that was horrendous. But the break was amazing because I came back ready to kind of hit that finish. So I did get breaks, but not like you would think.
Right. Or what you would need. I mean, that's the other thing that I'd like the listeners to kind of understand. Like, yeah, James did the impossible, the unthinkable, but again, Sonny, that ray of light, that energetic ball of flame that you are, to keep the wheels going, and everybody, hey, this is the goal, like, and that was, I mean, what would be your advice to that, just in relations to whether it's school, whether it's education or marriage or whatever, advice on the knowledge and the execution, that everything that went into this 100, even to 50, or even your family for that matter? What would you give people on execution? What's your advice on that? Because I mean, it's the empathetic way that you just demonstrated on saying, hey, yeah, you know what, if you're not, you're going to hurt us more if you continue to lag and follow behind and say less and do less. We don't need that. We need you to be here. If you can't be here, not 100%, not like, yeah, not like, it's a lot of things I'm learning is learning how to rest, not to quit. And so, and that was just kind of where that question for me is, that advice on, you've talked previously in other, podcasts, like that knowledge. And if you don't have the knowledge to execute, but if you don't execute, knowledge doesn't make any difference. So give me your best.
Well, I think it comes down to one thing. And I mean this in the most compassionate way. Either you want it or you don't. And I'm not talking about, I'll do anything to make it happen, because people say, oh, I'll do anything. And then they leave their families and they quit their jobs and they take off. And you're like, that's not what it means to do anything. But either you want it or you don't. And time is going to go with or without you. And do you want to be the person that looks back in 5 years and says, nothing in my life has changed over 5 years? Or do you want to be that person that looks back and says, I'm continuously evolving, adapting, and growing? So with something like this, it's like, do you think I want to look back on my life and say, man, I really wish we would have done that 100 thing we talked about once? I'm like, that's not a personality. And we're constantly looking for challenge and growth. So whether that is learning a new hobby, or it is mending a relationship, or it's reading a book about a subject you don't know much about. I mean, it could be anything, but the most toxic place to be is thinking you're sitting on a fence, to think you're just sitting, not acknowledging you're digressing. And that's really what it's all about. Either you want it or you don't. And if you don't, stop complaining about it. So you have to choose, either do it or don't, and shut up about it.
Yeah.
I use this example where somebody said to me, we always wanted to go on this trip for our 25-year anniversary and we just can't make it happen. And I was like, you had 25 years to plan for this. 25 years. What do you mean you didn't make it happen? I can't process that, right? Either you wanted to go or you didn't. And if you wanted to, you were going to make it happen. But for 25 years, you were just hoping it would magically happen, or what,
Yeah.
So,
No, I get that. That resonates a lot, because I think a lot of people, just to get a little religious on you, like, people think religious ways is, I'm going to pray for things to happen. And if you want to be spiritually, like, you're going to go out and make it happen. So
but what you're going to say is, you're going to say, please present the opportunity.
Yeah.
I will have the courage to take it.
Agreed. Where did this come from in your life? Where is that from? Your parents? Is that from just you being the competitive person that you are, or where does that resonate?
I was the 7th of 8 children, and my mom had 8 kids in 10 years, and it was quite a chaotic upbringing. We have a very bold family.
So were you at the top or the bottom?
I'm at the bottom. I'm number 7 of 8. Like,
Okay.
you know?
Low man on the totem pole.
Yeah. And when people would say things like, oh, I'm not very good at communicating, I'm like, oh, really? I come from a house where people over communicate, where I'm like, did you just say that out loud? You can't just say that to people. Like I come from this family of people who are very direct and very forthright. So I always tell people, I always say, if you think I'm bold, you should meet my family. Like I'm not nearly as bold as some of my siblings, and which mostly are women. I had two brothers. One passed away 15 years ago, so I only have one living brother. It's my sisters that are bold, right?
Mhm.
And so what I did growing up, I don't know why this is my gift and why this is my personality, but I have this thing about observation where I observe and I see what I like and what I don't like. And when I see what I like, I kind of break it down and observe what it took that person to get there or to do that.
Hmm.
So I say, okay, I really like the way that this mom who's 40 is a runner. So how do I be a runner when I'm 40? And how did she do it? So I ask questions, I figure it out, I watch, I learn. So with my siblings, I said, what do I like and what do I not like? And then I kind of like placed my order for life, what I wanted based off of that. And my family is extremely competitive, and I'm not. I don't have a competitive bone in my body. In fact, people joke that I'm the greatest waste of athletic talent in the planet because I'm incredibly athletic, but I don't have that competitive drive. I don't care. I'm just there for fun. I just want to have a good time. Like, I want to party, I don't want to race. It's like, well, I'll race and do my best, but I'm there for the sleepover over the weekend. It's not about the race for me, it's the training I enjoy. It's the fitness that I enjoy. So to me, it's really about observing people and saying, I really like this about them. So how do I acquire this? Or how do I learn this behavior? Or how do I adapt in my life to become more like this? And then I see other people. I have a lot of people that talk to me about their relationships, particularly men who are like, we need to know, like, how do you do this as a wife? And what do we tell our wives? So they start to tell me things about their wives. And I'm like, oh, do I do that? Like people are complaining like, oh, my wife does this. And I'm breaking down in my head. I'm like, do I do that to James? So I'm constantly thinking, well, how do I be better? How do I make sure I'm not doing that? Or how do I make sure that I'm, showing more physical affection and showing them that I want to connect with them and showing them that I appreciate with them. So it's just kind of something that I think I was born with, that I live my life in puzzles, and I'm constantly fixing pieces, whether it's organizing a closet or managing my time or deciding what kind of person I want to be. I'm always moving these pieces around to see how I can make this puzzle fit to be the person that I want to be.
Well, it's very, very fascinating because, you take that big picture and it's amazing that you can step back and not have any emotion into it, where a lot of the things in competitive sports is, and to be cool and collective. And then not only that, it's like you're just looking for the effective, efficient way to do the project or whatever it is you're at hand.
Obsessed with efficiency.
Right?
Obsessed. I live in a world of efficiency.
Nice.
I am a master at getting things done because I'm constantly, and that, stepping back into the picture, for instance, I see a lot of things that people envy about another person, but I see at what expense it took him to get there. So I say, do I really want to be a competitive triathlete? Because this mom is never home with her family.
Mm-hmm.
All she does is trains all day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to be that kind of mom.
Yeah.
Or this person's a competitive triathlete at the expense of their marriage, or their own personal well-being. They lack balance. They're not taking rest. There's no quiet. There's no like Zen. And so I say to myself, I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see what it takes to get there. And I don't value that enough to sacrifice these other things. So that's part of that dissection, right?
No, well, yeah. And I think that's really cool because, for somebody they can look past, hey, we're going to go to, Alta, but I'm not worried about, going skiing or snowboarding. I want to go check out the snow, the snow in the mountains and the people and whatnot, and everything around that makes it. And I think it's what I'm hearing from you is everything that you put into your family and every, the journeys and stuff. That is the nucleus to what you're trying to do. And that is the most important thing. And then everything else will just kind of fall into place as it goes along. So
without a doubt,
that's pretty cool. So talking about being competitive, give us a moment where you felt defeated versus being defeated. during, and this, again, this could be the 50-50, this could be the 100, or just in everyday life?
Well, I'd have to say, I don't know if I've ever felt like I've been defeated. I would say the closest I've been to feeling like I've been defeated is like I've been dealing with my like thyroid and weird health stuff. And so I have like these energy, like I have a hard time having enough energy to do stuff. And that's really weird for me. And I've been working on figuring that out for like 3 years. And I'm like, man, I can't, like in my mind, I'm like, is this just my new fate? And then I'm like, well, no, that's me giving in and saying I've been defeated, right?
Mhm.
But as far as feeling defeated, I think that is a perfectly appropriate emotion as long as it's temporary.
Mhm.
And I don't really ever feel defeated because I don't allow it.
Okay.
I think that I know I'm a very strong personality and a very powerful person. And the things that happen in my life are by choice. Like, for instance, I didn't learn to swim until I was in my 30s. And I worked really hard on my swim, and I was swimming 5 days a week, and I was doing all these drills, and everybody's still faster than me. And I don't ever seem to get faster. But my thought is like, oh well, that's fine. Like, I'll just keep enjoying my swim. I never feel that need to uh, get down on myself and be hard on myself, because I'm like, well, I'm doing the best I can. And if the best I can is not as good as somebody else, I don't care.
Yeah.
Or like I showed up for a boulder race, the 70.3, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get the swim to start with a 34. I know I can do it. And then the swim ended up being long. And I was like, the one time in my life, my swim was gonna start with a 34 instead of a 35. And the course was like 200 long. Like one of the buoys had blown. And I was like, come on, man. But deep down, I'm like, but I know it would have started with 34.
Right.
Like I didn't need that documented to show or whatever. So I don't typically sit in a place of feeling defeated. And if I would, it would be such a brief moment that I can't even remember it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that was a kind of a follow-up question would be, you stated a lot about the Zen and being in the moment and present and not letting that ego take in that pride and take in that defeat. That's awesome. That's a great analogy on how to handle that. And just being more focused on the goal, going all the way back to beginning of
Yes.
what is the main
Exactly.
point. So that's
Well,
awesome.
sometimes I don't even think you get to know, because James and I have been through some really hard stuff. We lost everything in the recession and we had to start over, and we went through some really hard stuff to kind of build this back up and create this brand. And it's like we did the half and the full world record and it wasn't good enough. No one cared. And then we do the 50 and a lot of people care, but everybody's saying, but what's next? What's next? What's next? We live in the, adrenaline junkie world where people are like, entertain me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until James was ready for another challenge. He's like, okay, I think I'm going to do this thing. I can't stop thinking about it. We're going to do it. And finally it took off. But even in those moments, we never felt defeated. It was, I can't speak for James. Maybe he did, but I didn't. I'm a solution-oriented person. I always knew there was a solution.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, we thought this was a solution and this isn't it. That means there's got to be another one. We got to try something else. So I think defeat comes from feeling like there is no solution. And that's never where my mind is. My mind is always, well, it happened for a reason and there has to be a solution to this problem. So I don't sit in a defeat mindset. It's not, I don't make room for that. I'm always saying, okay, so what's the solution? The downside to that is I have to make sure that I'm not always offering solutions, that I also listen. So be empathetic and to listen to other people's problems and not go, but I can solve that problem for you,
Yeah. Well, and you talked a little bit about your fate going into that. What does that play in the role of, again, so you have your fate, you have your ego, and then you have, the way that Sonny does this. I mean, how is that a perfect balance every time that goes along with what, the adaptions and the big picture and everything? Or are you a firm believer that just happens to be that's it? I mean, my 34, that's I'm not going to get any better. No matter what I try, whatever training regime I do or whatever, this is the it. How do you accept that?
Well, it goes back to at what expense?
Okay.
At what expense? I'm sure I could have gotten to a faster swim if I was willing to commit to what it took. And I was like, but I don't value the swim that much.
Okay.
I had some personal goals because I learned to swim. So I was like, okay, I want to do these things. I want to see how good I can get and this and that, whatever. But then it's like the investment to improve your swim is not the same as the investment to improve your bike or your run. The payoff is not the same. It's way more worth it to invest into the swim or the bike and the run because the payoff's going to be 20 minutes, not 1 minute. Right. So that's when I weigh and I say to myself also, I don't just swim for improvement. I swim because I enjoy it. I hit that water. I always tell people when I swim outside, I feel like I'm on vacation in Mexico. You get these outdoor pools and the sun's shining and the ground is sparkling. You're like, I'm freaking on vacation when really you're just at an outdoor rec center. So I just enjoy that swim so much that it's not about that time. Everything I do because I enjoy it. And as soon as I stop enjoying it, I step back and say, like I quit doing triathlon a few years ago because I was like, I don't enjoy it anymore. It doesn't do for me. But when I get on a mountain bike, I'm like, why doesn't the entire world do this? This thing is magical.
Right.
So it's adapting with that, I don't always surrender and just say, this is my fate. But I say to myself, if this was my fate, would I be okay with it? Right?
Yeah.
Can I accept this? Can I adapt? Can I change and say I can be happy even if this is my fate? That's more of the realm of my thinking.
No, that's a great, going back to the growth mindset and, just, hey, I haven't mastered this yet, or I'm still learning how to go about this. And I think, a lot of people say, oh, is that just making kind of excuses? I was like, no, that's what you're saying is accepting what happened. Or
I changed my mind.
Yeah.
I changed my mind. When I realized what this was going to take, it's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
I changed my mind.
And so explain that too, like not that there's ramifications of changing your mind, but what happens if people are wanting to, hey, could you elaborate on that? Or is it's just that, I mean, I don't want to do it. Well,
it's all your intentions.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Are you looking for an excuse or did you actually change your mind? Because every triathlete will say, oh, I would have been faster, but I dropped my salt tabs, or I would have been faster, but this and this didn't go right. And you're like, we all would have been faster if all the circumstances were perfect, dummy.
Right.
We all face the same wind.
Yeah.
We face the same waves in the water. Like, and then people are like, oh, but it was just so hot. I'm like, it was hot for all of us.
Yeah.
It was 96 degrees for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but I don't do well with heat. Well, nobody does well with heat. We die in heat.
Yeah.
So what is the intention? If you're making excuses for yourself, I would say there's no such thing as an explanation. It's only an excuse.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain anything ever unless you're making an excuse. Unless somebody asks for an explanation. If they say, hey, what happened? Then you can explain it. I don't know. I'm like, really, most explanations are just excuses. I'm not a big fan of that. I just leave it out. My friend Carly always says, I was going to go faster, but I just got tired and couldn't.
Yeah.
That's a joke for triathletes of like, oh, I was going to go way faster, but then I just was tired and couldn't.
Yeah. Well, it's a good out there. So, well, you mentioned a little bit about, the adrenaline junkie and what's next for James, but what's next for Sunny? What's Sunny want to do? I mean, what's on her goal list? What she's wanting to do?
I have always had a gift with people. So people, social, connecting, strangers, groups, all of it. Like people have always been my thing. And James is actually the opposite. So we create this really good balance of where he performs and then kind of can like tuck away. And then I'm like, how are you all doing today? So as time has passed, I've waited until my kids were older. I didn't want to do anything when they were young. I wanted to wait till they're older. I did go back to school, graduated right before the 50. So that's a big goal that I checked off and finished college. But now I want to find a way to connect. So for instance, James is traveling this week to speak and I'm going to go with him. And so from now on, I'm going to start doing a lot of these trips with James and kind of reconnect and get myself back out in the world because I've been a mom for so many years. And of course I've done a lot of things and, gotten out there and done stuff, but I really want to integrate back into the world and see where the world is at. And my kids kept me young and they've kept me in the loop and things, but I want to start connecting. And I have this real passion for women because I see women who are really struggling. And, I have a friend Felicia, she's so cute. Today we went for a hike and she's been a massage therapist for 18 years and she worked on James during the 100 and we've been friends for 15 years. And she had to get wrist surgery because she's kind of messed up that wrist. And for 2 weeks, she's been in a cast and she does fitness classes and stuff and she kind of can't really do anything. And she's like, man, I've been worthless for 2 weeks. And I was like, you realize you've been doing exactly what I've been doing for 2 weeks. Taking care of your family, taking care of your home,
Right.
volunteering in your church entities, connecting with neighbors. And she's like, well, when you say it like that, I guess my time hasn't been that useless.
Yeah.
But it's all this perception. It's like we feel like to have an impact on the world, we have to go out there and be on the stage of the White House shouting feminist chants, when the reality is everything we do has value.
Mhm.
And whether that's helping the old lady cross the street, or whether that's raising kids, or whether that's being a high profile attorney and showing people in the world what's up, it's all the same.
Yeah.
So for me, I've been able to do this amazing thing of raising my kids and preparing them to face the world and be who they are and have their confidence. And now I'm ready to go back out there and to connect with women in particular. So I don't really know what that entails, but I know it's coming. I can feel it looming. And I'm going to just kind of start hanging out with James when he travels to see kind of what opportunities present themselves.
Yeah.
I do a lot of work with women, a lot of work with women.
That's cool. That's cool. Is there a book on the horizon for you, or?
I've been hearing that for a long time. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of jotting down feelings and emotions about certain experiences, about certain topics. Lucian actually for a couple of years has been writing, she wants to write a parenting book about things that work and don't work, right? As a
Mhm.
teenager. I mean, now she's 18, but this is what works and this is what I see doesn't work. So we've kind of got some ideas like that we've been jotting things down. So my goal is just kind of to start filling in the holes and see what kind of presents itself. And if something ever comes up, then I have all of this documentation that I've put time into when I had the time, and kind of see what happens. But
Yeah.
there's got to be a book. I mean, I have
Yeah.
so many people asking me so many questions they're like, but who is this woman? I'm
Right.
like, there's this crazy demand. So I was like, there's no reason not to do it.
Mhm.
I just need to figure out the format and how I want to do it. So in the meantime, I'm just jotting stuff down.
Well, that's cool, and I think that's really cool. The women mentors, you don't necessarily see a lot of that. And I recent podcast I had Hillary Allen on. She's an ultra runner, and she talked a lot about the science of running, and it's all about men, and we need more women to step up and be a spokesperson for everybody. And that's just really cool that you do that. That resonates very, very much with me. So thanks for sharing that. But so just kind of wrapping things up, the energy and the ray of you and your kids that you've raised, and your husband that you've helped along the way, is there anything that you would change going into this? As the last question, what would you change, if anything, if you could?
I asked James the other day, I said, what would you go back and tell your 30-year-old self before all this started? And he's like, well, I don't know how many regrets. I said, I'm not talking regrets. Like, what would you say to console that 30-year-old self that was like struggling and wondering how he's going to provide for this large family, and the recession hits? And I'm like, what would you say? And he said, I would tell him it's going to take longer than you think, but it's going to be worth it. And I was like, that's really good advice, like for him to his younger self. So I think what I would say to my younger self is I would have just said, you're not alone. I spent a lot of my young motherhood alone. And I had friends in the mornings, but I didn't ever have any help.
Mhm.
And I had to manage a lot of things on my own. And it, I believe the Lord sends us through our trials to teach us compassion and to
Mhm.
also make us relatable. Because if I've never had any problems, how am I ever going to relate to yours? Right. And I don't have to, but people like that human relation. They like to connect like that. And so I look back on my life and I see all the things that I went through have taught me empathy and compassion, how to connect with people who may be going through the same things. But I think I would have just offered words of encouragement by saying, you're not alone.
Mhm.
You know, you're not alone, whether it be with, just that God's with you, which I knew, or whether it's, there's a lot of women that will be rallying behind you sooner than you think or whatever. But I don't think I would change anything.
Yeah.
There were some hard years. I don't think I would change anything.
Well, and I just had to ask because, like you said, with everything that you did go through, and you know, the alone mother, raising 5 kids, and then your husband, and like you said, the recession, and I mean, but I see your point that, like, if you don't have a struggle, it's not that you're trying to relate, but you can at least just say, you know what, I've been there. I can understand where you're at, not to
Exactly.
complete the attempt. That's one of the things. I work, with some kids, at-risk kids and emotional kids, and the one thing that kids have told me is, like, Mr. C, it's great that you don't say I know how you feel, because I don't think you can ever really know what somebody really feels unless you can relate to it. Yeah, I can see you're upset. How upset are you? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? And so that's really cool. What did you
But
get
don't
your
you, but don't you think like the feeling of betrayal is the same, whether it's your father molesting you or your best friend telling your deepest, darkest secret? It's like ultimately the feeling of betrayal is the same. The feeling of fear is the same. The feeling of inadequacy is the same. The birth of those emotions may be different, but a human race, we should be able to connect with just those emotions, right?
right?
Me just feeling empathy for you should allow me to connect with you, even though I didn't experience that same trauma,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's a perception. I'm trying to understand what you're going through. I don't want to solve what you are going through. I want
But
to
I can support
understand.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
That
here for
what's the
you. I
best
will love
way?
you.
Yeah, what's the
Exactly.
best way I can help you get through
Exactly.
this and identify? Because a lot of kids say, "Oh, I'm just angry." Well, sounds like you're more agitated, and there's so many different variations of what the emotion really is. So, what did you get your degree in, by the way, just out of curiosity?
Psychology.
I was gonna say, you got that knack, so good
Yeah,
for
I
you.
live and breathe psychology all day long.
So are you looking to go into social work, or are you gonna do your own
No, do
practice,
you know
or?
why? Because of the red tape. I don't
Oh,
want anybody
well,
telling me what to do.
yeah. Well, it's funny because, like I said, I'm working at Imagine, by North Point in Boise, and again, it's addiction and mental health facility for kids 12 to 17, and I'm going back into the classroom to be a teacher again, and so I just feel like that experience has helped me better understand my kids, at that, because I used to think, like, if you don't have education, you don't have anything, but if you don't have your mental health, like, on the top of the
Yeah.
forefront, you're you're not going to be learning anything anyway. So
Well, wisdom is power, right? So it's like I can sniff out somebody who's struggling without them ever saying a word. And
mhm,
then because of that, I know how to behave and how to connect with them or how to break down those walls. That's just kind of one of my gifts. Again, people, right?
mhm,
Without them ever saying a word. So, but I don't want red tape. I don't want
yeah,
somebody telling me you got to do it the way the government tells you to do it. I'm like, no, I want to connect with them the way I feel comfortable connecting with them, the way they feel connecting with me, regardless of what the law is. So
yeah.
I'm not bound to the law because I'm not licensed. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's HIPAA and everything else you got to be aware of, and going from there. But I mean, some of it's good, some of it's bad. I was in a private practice, so it was kind of like we weren't really funded by the government. We're more, privately owned, and so we got to do a little more flexibility, a little bit more different way of going about and interventions and all that good stuff. So, but well, Sonny Lawrence, I thank you so graciously and wholeheartedly for joining me with, on the Running Educator podcast. And you are an amazing person. As everything I've read about you, you are that ball of light, always looking at the positive. And I just think you're an amazing person. And thank you for sharing your story. And I hope the best for you and your family, and James. And is his next challenge going to be 100 golf courses in 100 days, or I mean, that's what I'm hoping, because that'd be a lot less on the body. But
I tell you what, he's crazy. He would do these golf trips with his friends and he golfed 36 holes 3 days in a row. And I'm like, who
wow.
golfs 36 whole, like I
Yeah.
get tired of 14. I'm like 14. I'm like, I'll ride a couple in the cart with you and then I'll maybe play the last hole, you know?
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see. He's got to get his new presentation and everything together. And, you know, reality started today after Mexico. We head up to Tennessee tomorrow. He's
Mhm.
got some presenting to do. So he's got some work to do to get ready to get back on his professional circuit. But I mean,
Oh,
he
man.
initially wasn't supposed to speak till middle of August, but there's been a few people that have sneaked in before then. You know, he's he's got some stuff to get together. So I don't know. We will see. We will see.
Wow. You know what? You're amazing. You're awesome. I hope to, you know, I'm going to get this out probably August, September.
Just send me the link when you get it and I'll share it.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I appreciate your time and hope you have wait, one last question. What is the weather like down in Utah right now? Because I'm in Idaho.
Probably
It's
exactly the same as yours, over 100 degrees.
yeah, it's dry, it's smoky, and it sucks. But
Yeah, we have all the smoke from all the fires. Like, in fact, I got home from Mexico yesterday and I was like, what the freak is happening here?
yeah,
I was like, where are their fires?
like a
Well, they're not
post-apocalypse.
here, but we
Yeah,
get all that smoke.
the
So
California. Yeah,
it's inevitable. You know,
yeah,
it's just the world we live in today.
yep,
So
yep.
we pray
No,
for rain is what we do. We pray for rain.
definitely sooner than later. But yes, well, I'm signing off. Again, I appreciate you wholeheartedly, and I'll be in touch. I'll just email you again the link and go from there.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Okay. See ya.
Bye.